message says.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Nice, it's still converting.
Part 2.
Oh, yeah. Actually, put 2E, but she didn't want to type it out.
It's kind of delayed.
Any hand movement.
Ken, just so you know, it does say recording live on YouTube. Is that your understanding? Okay,
Yes, sir.
very good.
Sent a picture of the fireplace over in the.
Oh,
Oh, that
very
was
weird.
Rather than.
Yeah.
burning
You
dust.
start burning the furniture, that's the problem.
Oh, did you see what she just said? There is a bonfire picture. You? That's very funny. Looks kind of good there. Nice and warm.
Hey, Ken, in the interest of time, are we recording? Is the meeting begun again or not? Because I had one thing I needed to mention to the board, and if we could do it now, it might save time later.
No, I was just about to say that we're recording and live and we can resume the meeting right now.
Oh, good. I'll hold off.
Okay, we're back in business. It is 2:18 and we are picking up under item J, our public hearing at the point of discussion. Christian, are you saying that you need to let us know something so you can take off or?
No, not necessarily. I just thought if we were on hold for the other hearing part, I could get back to you on the request you'd made coming out of the executive session on Tuesday for some talking points on the Thielman case, but I'll hold off till we're done with the public hearing.
Okay. I'm not familiar with
That's
the
the
Thielman.
that's the federal lawsuit. Yeah.
The lawsuit.
Is the
Yeah,
Thielman?
the class action lawsuit, you'd asked me to pull together something that we might be able to post to the website.
I would just say in the interest of time, because we've already opened a public hearing that hasn't been closed yet. We had
Yeah. I'll wait.
an unplanned interruption due to the internet dropping. I would recommend that we either resume the hearing or you could also recess and we could resume the hearing at a future date or, kind of keep in process moving. I'd like to close the book before we end up in on where we're at process wise before we have a discussion on an unrelated topic.
Okay. Well, I already did reopen the hearing, so we are in it. I don't really know where to pick up other than to say that I would recommend that we continue this hearing until we have some clarification on what the parameters of an interchange overlay district is, whether or not it can be used for ODOT's Winooski interchange specifically. And then also what public notification might look like for folks that have land in each of these zones. And the reason I say that is because some of these zones, if you're an owner of property in these zones, you may not expect that your neighbor who may own land in the same zone would be allowed to have a road, highway, or other transportation facility as a conditional use, which is a bit of a lower bar than obviously a prohibited use. So for the interest of the property owners in our county who do own land in these zones, I think it would be good to let them know that we're considering this. Christian, did you have your hand up for
Chair, may I ask you a little
something on
clarifying?
this?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know when you guys realized that the internet stopped working, but it was during the time when Director Friday was speaking. So if it is helpful to go back and have him complete what he was saying, I don't know if that would help clarify it for folks who might be watching or for the board in terms of where you were when the internet connection stopped. That's all I was going to say.
Director Friday, do you remember where you left off?
Well, I
I
thought
do.
I had a question from Commissioner Kula about the prohibition of the uses in the zones. And so I was getting ready to answer that. And I can give that answer. Do you remember specifically what the question was?
The question that I have written down here was about protecting, because you've referred many times to protecting the underlying purpose of the land, and I was going to direct the question to Director Friday around what the underlying purpose of the land is in the industrial, in the VLDR, these zones that are on this list, right? Because they're not ag, just so you know.
Yes, I realize they're not agriculture district or zones.
Okay. I mean, the underlying purpose of the zone isn't ag or forestry.
Well, but my point is for a public airport or a landing field is the goal of the underlying zone to have a public walking trail in it. I mean, that's my point.
We're not talking about public walking trail.
We're talking about roads, highways, and other transportation facilities and improvements that would include bicycle paths and walking paths.
Right. And if an applicant, and I guess this is a question, but if an applicant comes to the county and applies, I'm struggling to see what the problem is with somebody applying. Right now, nobody can build roads or paths in any of these per our interpretation.
Well, yeah, and I think that was what I was trying to answer, is that the language is in the LUBA decision. It's in 2018-061 is the LUBA number on it, and it was received December of 2018. And it's on page 20. It says Yamhill County Zoning Ordinance 501.02 and 501.03 lists the permitted and conditional uses allowed in the AF10 zone they were specifically talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Petitioners are correct that neither Yamhill County Zoning Ordinance 501.02 or 03 lists transportation facility as an allowed use. County Zoning Ordinance 501.04 states that, quote, uses of land and water not specifically mentioned in this section are prohibited in the AF10 district. And what I was going to explain is that we have similar language throughout all these other zones. So in the VLDR zone, it's the prohibited uses are in 502.04. It says uses of land and water not specifically mentioned in this section shall be prohibited in the VLDR districts. Section 503 of the LDR zone, it's in 503.04, uses of land and water not specifically mentioned in this section are prohibited in the LDR districts. And so that's where they made the conclusion
And because that's continued throughout our code, that's why we feel like there's a need to clarify what zones are we going to have roads in.
Right, and thank you, Chair. So the question that I was asking as I noticed it was going away was if we removed the process for forestry and ag for building for roads, would that subsequently allow them in all of the districts?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you knew what I meant. Okay. So I did want to perhaps challenge this suggestion of Chair Bershowers that we should provide notification to landowners when we're extending opportunities to them to do more with their land. I don't think it goes counter to the measure 56 notification, which is when we are proposing to restrict their rights as property owners. This is an extension. We're actually adding to their authorized uses of their land by either permitted or conditional use.
Right, but you own land in what EFU zones.
Mhm.
If your neighbor who also owns land in an EFU zone decided they wanted to build a casino next to you and the Board of Commissioners gave them permission as a conditional use, you don't think you would want to know that that was now a conditional use?
I would know that it was applied for because I'm an adjacent landowner, so the conditional
but
use
the
permit
barrier-
process would notify me.
The barrier for you to weigh in for the impact on your property is lower now or higher. What I'm saying is if it's a prohibited use, the protection of private property is stronger than if it's a conditional. use.
So
And the protection of the underlying purpose of the zone is stronger.
So to go back to the casino, if there was a process at Yamhill County to extend the rights and privileges of landowners and exclusive farm use zonings to include the option to have a casino by conditional use permit process, I would have the opportunity by looking in the paper to determine whether I wanted to oppose that, as would many other people in Yamhill County. Now, if we're thinking, if we as a board decide it's a policy that every time we extend opportunities to landowners to do more with their land, that we should send public notice to everybody in case somebody is opposed to that, who is a landowner in that, then we should make that choice as a policy decision. But I don't think that it's appropriate as a policy decision.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That's our role, is to decide whether or not this is appropriate as a policy decision.
Is to notify people.
No,
I'm talking about the notification process. I don't think it's appropriate to spend the money to notify people that we're proposing to extend a right to them that they don't otherwise have. Because right now they don't have that right.
is there a way
build a public
to
road.
limit the language and just refer to roads and highways? And prohibit
I think
any
we
other
talked about
use?
that in the-
Yeah, if you want to modify it, it's fine to do. It's just that when it was at the planning commission, I was trying to make the point that, it's pointed out that even with a road, you can still walk along the road, you can still ride a bicycle along the road, you can still, ride a horse along a road. So they were trying not to define it down real specific and instead put it down as a conditional use, which I understand the concern about the notice, but the conditional use does require notice. In fact, it requires two notices: one, that there's an application that's been made, and a second, that a decision's been made, and you have an opportunity to either request a hearing on the first notice or appeal the decision if you don't like it on the second notice.
Okay, well, my suggestion to continue this still stands. I think the public testimony is overwhelmingly in opposition and is promoting hesitation on how broad this proposal is. I would like to look into the specifics of what is allowed with an interchange overlay district, so that we can, excuse me, so that we can address ODOT's concerns specifically. And then if we get to a point where we just don't have the ability to alleviate some of the concerns of ODOT in that overlay district, perhaps it is that we look at those three zones and say, we need to make these conditional uses in these three zones so that ODOT can proceed. But I do want to spend some more time looking at the need for expanding the allowable uses in these other zones. And I don't see any clear and convincing evidence that it's urgent, needs to happen today. And so I would be in favor of continuing this.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Chair, do you want a motion? Because at this point, I would be willing to make a motion to deny the updated sections regarding this docket. And
I don't know that we need a motion.
well,
What I'm hoping is that we can continue the discussion, and then once we have more information, we can pick it up again.
okay, so you
Do you have a-
basically at this point, because I'm wondering at this point, process wise, to just basically, we're leaving a lot of this undone when it's clear, well, at least it looks like the majority of the board is not in favor of updating this as the docket is written. So I'm just wondering if we advance further and continue the discussion. I believe we can continue the discussion after that motion is made, but maybe I'm wrong.
Your chair or Commissioner Starrett, you're proposing that that you make a motion to deny it and then continue during the further discussion to talk about next steps. Is that how?
Yeah, next steps, whether or not it would be, okay, motion denied, is it going back to the planning commission, or are we getting more direction, information from the planning director regarding the interchange overlay district and proceeding from there? But if that's not how the board wants to proceed, I understand.
Chair, I would say, I mean, I know that there's a lot of experts here about process, but denying it, ends this. But if you're interested in having something that modifies this going forward, then continuing continuing to a further date that's certain would probably be the best way to go.
Right, because I guess what I'm trying to say is if we come to the conclusion after, some more research that we don't have options for a more surgical sort of approach for ODOT, then obviously we're going to have to look at AF10, PWS, and VLDR 2.5 as conditional uses. So I don't want to strike anything right now. I'd rather just continue it, and then we can sort of come back to that discussion once we have more information.
So how do we do that at this point? If, in other words, what would?
Oh, yeah.
I just want to highlight that if the board feels that the board has insufficient information to make a motion or a decision today, you could also continue the hearing, raise your questions for Ken or council, whoever you want to raise the questions, bring those specific questions, and then we could reopen the hearing at a later time. And we could report back and then see if that's sufficient information for the board to then make a decision about next step of the process, whether it's approved, deny, send back to the planning commission, or whatever action the board would like to take. If you feel like you have insufficient information, you can continue this hearing to a future date and pose those specific questions, and we could reopen at that time.
So since there isn't actually an ordinance in front of the board right now, this is taking into consideration a staff recommendation. You don't need to necessarily deny it. You can just continue to take that recommendation and talk about it at a later date. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So if we continued it to the 10th of November, is that, do we have other public hearings then?
There's this one. But
Oh, but that's just a deliberation, right?
But it also depends on what questions the board has and whether, Ken, you feel that's sufficient information or you have a good idea of the.
as I understand it, the question is, can you modify the overlay zone and exception area the bypass.
Yeah.
That would be, one question. And, didn't know if there was another question that.
Oh, I wondered whether that you had asked the question, but there wasn't really a follow-up of it. Was roads, highways, and other transportation facilities, and whether that was clear that you could strike the transportation facilities, and whether that would do anything.
And then I would just highlight,
Was
it
that-
doesn't necessarily that the questions all have to be come up right here. That
Yeah.
If you have questions that come up
Yeah.
after you continue this discussion to a later date, you could raise those questions.
Yeah.
Right, so if at the end of the day you decide to pass an ordinance, I can draft that ordinance however the board chooses to move forward, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So however you decide to ultimately decide, if there's an ordinance at the end of it, whatever needs to be in it can be put in it. Doesn't need to be restricted to what was in the recommendation.
Okay, so Ken, you're scheduled to be here on the 3rd for a department update, but then we also have a public hearing on the 10th.
Yeah, and I'm fine coming back on the 10th. I think it'd be, tight to go on the 3rd, just because of, board hearing. And I was gonna ask,
Oh, right, two for us, two for.
yeah,
planning, yeah.
I was gonna ask, Mr. Huffer if I could maybe, delay my, board briefing on that day, just.
Oh, gotcha.
For the. for
Approved.
myself and for the board, so that they, wouldn't have to hear me and then. go through hearing.
Ken says great.
Okay.
The other
Yes,
Ken says
I-
great.
Come back on the 10th.
Do you want me to make a motion?
Trying my best to get you the memo, that, Debbie will look at and, put her in the approval on that. Would, try to answer your questions.
Okay, sounds good.
We've got, do we need a motion for it?
Direction is good.
Direction, okay.
I think just a motion to continue this.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
I move that we continue docket G-01-22 to November 10th.
maybe our treasurer will switch. She can come on the 3rd. All right, so there's a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, we will take this back up on November 10th. And thank you, everyone who
Yeah.
came in and spoke and participated. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to go back to our agenda under item K, which is announcements. Hang
The
on,
only
I-
one I have is Oregon, Infrastructure and Brownfield Summit. I'll get you my slides. There's not a lot to them, but it was a good conversation about drinking water and how communities can get funding for it.
I have a whole bunch, but I'm not.
Oh,
gonna
you do?
dare. I'm not
Um,
even gonna dare.
If I may, because
Yes.
we got folks kind of leaving the room and things, but Christian did
that's
ask
right.
about a quick update and he's remote and
That's
so
right,
he
yes.
can get.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, Christian.
Sure. So we had chatted earlier this week, and the board at that time had expressed some interest in a possibly a very simple, factual statement around the class action lawsuit that the county, along with the state and 11 other counties, have been named as defendants. I have a very brief statement that I could read to the board now to see if you are comfortable with, or I could send it on to Ken to post to the website. And then if you had questions or thoughts about that, if you wanted to add to it or what have you, we could take that approach. It would take a matter of seconds to read, and I'm not worried about any of the specific content in it. It's very, very straightforward.
Okay, yeah, I think, go ahead and read it.
Okay, Yamhill County, together with the state of Oregon and 11 other Oregon counties, has been named as a defendant in a class action lawsuit filed in federal district court. The case alleges election irregularities and violations of federal law and constitutional rights. The county, in coordination with the other named defendants, will defend against these allegations. The plaintiffs are not seeking any changes to voting or counting of ballots in the current general election.
Okay. I think that covers, our concerns about if people have questions, if it's going to impact this election. So,
Yeah, I thought that, and yes, I think that hopefully does what you were interested in doing. So,
okay.
I can send that to you if you'd like, and then for posting to the website.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay. So further announcements, our county clerk, Carrie Hinton, had an open house on Monday and invited the public in to see the process of a ballot from start to finish, and really surprised by the crowds there. Quite a few people attended and had some great questions. I'm always amazed to hear the feedback because a lot of folks, they see these things in social media and they get spun up about them and what's happening with my ballot and is this happening or this happening? And then they talk to a clerk or walk through the process and their questions are answered and they feel much better about the process. So it was wonderful to see. And a lot of people didn't know about ballot tracks. So that was good that they now know about that. I presented the outstanding graduating senior awards for 4-H to two very familiar names, Cheyenne Kelly and Madison Bingman. They were both our fair ambassadors, and I was joined by Ron Noble Monday night for that. So it was a really fun yearly annual award ceremony that they have. So I do want to take a moment to honor Newburgh City Councilor Denise Bacon, who passed away last week. Just a tireless advocate for her community, and she will be missed. Her celebration of life is on November 13th at 2 p.m. at the Newburgh High School, and the Newburgh Dundee Police Department is also doing a procession for her on Sunday, starting at 10:45 in Newburgh. So, Commissioner Sterrett, did you have anything?
Just briefly, and thank you for bringing up the clerk's open house. It was very informative. I learned a lot, and I appreciate Carrie and her team. I have a lot of confidence in that. I attended an adult recovery drug court graduation. It was a member of the tribe who had an amazing journey and was a real inspiration to those who are still working in their recovery journey. Also, the Newburgh Urban Area Management Commission, the Urban Reserve expansion was continued a second time. The applicant requested that. We had our reconvening of the Family Wellbeing Council, and Housing Authority, just to let you know, an update on Ms. Edwards was given the opportunity to make public comment, declined, and was not represented at the meeting. So just wanted to let you know that work is still ongoing to address those needs.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to Behavioral Health and Human Services for the work in addressing the needs of a veteran in crisis who was able to get in for some much needed immediate therapy sessions yesterday, and there's been a significant improvement. And I just want to say we really need to acknowledge the work that they do.
Great. Thank you. Any further announcements? Ken, you have anything? No? Okay. All right. So I will adjourn the October 27th Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal and informal session. It is 2:44. Thank you.
Chair.